So if Ashley heard, okay.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Today, I would like to first say Happy New Year to everyone. Glad to see you guys' faces, even though we're not in person, but hopefully everyone had a great New Year. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Today's date is January 23rd. The time is now 6:37 p.m. I will go ahead and take a roll call of all members. If you could just stay present when I call your name, please. Go with the roll here. Ms. Bryant,
Here.
Dr. Coleman,
Present.
Mr. James,
Present.
Mr. Melton,
Here.
Mr. O'Neill,
Here.
Mrs. Ridley, absent. Mr. Sanchez,
Here.
Mrs. Springs,
Here.
and Mr. Vergamini.
I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Everybody's here. The only one that is absent is Mrs. Marsha Ridley. We have a quorum and we'll continue go with the meeting. I would like to make a motion. Marva Jo, did you have anything you wanted to say first?
I will go ahead. I know you're about, Mr. Chairman, to make the closing statement. We did want to reiterate, which we have in past meetings, that although we're going to go in closed session under the personnel exception, which will be read by the chairman, we could have also not been subject to the Open Meetings Act because we are getting ready to deal with some administrative functions. But in an abundance of wanting to be transparent and provide opportunities for the community to participate or see what we're doing, we have chosen to do it under the Open Meetings Act rather than the administrative function.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we do the approval of the minutes before you go in closed meeting?
Okay, I was trying to pull up the agenda, but I could not.
I dropped it in the chat.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, it was kind of, I had some difficulty too, Mr. Chairman, but I was able to finally open it. Denise, I noticed it's at approval of minutes, but didn't we have more than one?
It's minutes. We've got 4 sets that should have gone out to the board.
Okay, hold on.
Can you,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Marva Jo.
no, can you, because we are going to need to do them separately. Can you name all of the ones, Denise?
Tangi, can you do that? Because I don't have the dates. Tangi? I know she sent them.
Thank you. I forgot to take myself off mute.
Okay.
So tonight, the board will discuss the approval of minutes from November 16th, 2022, November 22nd, 2022, December 14th, 2022, and December 21st, 2022.
21st, Tangi, okay,
December 21st.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and Denise, I asked, I know that they received them, but I was inquiring so that it could be part of the
Okay.
minute.
Did everyone get an opportunity to review the minutes? Did you receive them? Sorry, let me make sure I'm putting them.
The first 3 sets were sent out prior to December 21st meeting. The last set you probably got within the last week.
Okay. All right, okay. It's November 16th.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for November 16th.
For Ms. Bryant, if you don't mind, for purposes of our public, can you just announce your name? when
I'm
you-
sorry, I'm Sheila Bryant,
Thank you.
and I repeat that I'm making a motion to approve the minutes of November 16th.
Seconded. With an amendment that we also approve the meeting minutes from November 22nd, December 14th, and December 21st.
Danny, I asked specifically if we not do them together, we're gonna do them separately.
Oh, you're killing me. All right, then I second the motion for
Back
November
up.
16th.
Okay, and as I asked Ms. Bryant, would you please state your name as you make the second?
I, Daniel Vergamini, second the motion to approve the minutes for November 16th, 2022 of the PAB.
Okay, Mr. James? Saw your hand go up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I have a correction to those November 16th minutes. Just, my recommendation is on the tally sheet, I believe on the last one. The tally sheet is showing 10 yays. And I think it should be 9 with 1 abstention. So that tally sheet needs to be corrected.
Mr. James,
Yes.
on the one, which is the one that needs, because it shows and I don't have it. I don't see it. Which is the person that's on there that shouldn't have been on there? Or is it just a count?
The count is inaccurate. It shows for 10. It should be 9 with 1 abstention. The numbers in the correct boxes, but the tally shows 10 votes in affirmative when it's only 9. It should be 1 and 1 abstention.
Okay. Did somebody get that?
Does it show who should have been the abstain, who
Yes.
abstained?
Yep.
Was it you?
No, it's Ms. Springs is the abstention.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we have to change. Okay. Thank you, Mr. James. And that was from November 16th. Okay. Did you get that, Denise, or Marvin? Joe? Who wrote that down?
Tangi
Tangi
and
did?
Marvin. We're working on
And I
this
voted.
on the
yeah.
22nd now.
Well, we haven't taken a vote on the 6th.
Okay.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'll go around and take the vote. Ms. Bryant,
I vote aye.
Dr. Coleman,
Vote aye, and with the Mr. James's proposed amendment, my vote is aye.
thank you. Mr. James,
With the correction, I vote aye.
thank you, sir. Mr. Melton,
I vote aye as well.
Mr. O'Neill,
Aye.
Mrs. Ridley, absent. Mr. Sanchez,
Yes, as amended.
Mrs. Springs,
So you're on mute.
I saw the motion. Okay, thank you. And Mr. Vergamini,
I vote aye as amended.
thank you so much. Let's get that tally.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Next one.
I'm sorry, Chair, did you vote?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I didn't read yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, Ms. Tangi. Yes, the chair votes aye. Thank you. Motion to approve the minutes from November 22nd, 2022.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
Carlos Sanchez, I make a motion to approve the minutes for November 22nd, 2022.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, Keaton James, second.
Thank you, Mr. James. Take the roll. The chair votes yes. Mrs. Bryant? You're on mute.
On mute.
I vote aye.
Thank you. Dr. Coleman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill?
Aye.
Mrs. Ridley? Absent. Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Mrs. Springs?
Aye.
And Mr. Vergamini?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. I saw that. Thank you. On to the minutes from December 14th, 2022.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the December 14th, 2022 PAB meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you, sir. Mr. James?
Tamika Springs, I second it.
Thank you, Mrs. Springs. The chair votes yes. Mrs. Bryant?
Vote yes.
Dr. Coleman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Melton?
Aye as well.
Mr. O'Neill?
Aye.
Mrs. Ridley? Absent. Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Mrs. Springs?
Aye.
And Mr. Vergamini?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Are you good, Ms. Tangi?
We now need to consider December 21st minutes.
Okay. Let me see. I didn't see those. Okay.
I sent those on January 20th at 5:02. I'll forward it back to all. Okay, you should receive it right away.
All right, thank you. Does everyone have it? Well, 21, right? Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from December 21st, 2022? Okay. Any motion to approve the minutes from December 21st, 2022?
Andrea Coleman, and I make a motion to approve the minutes from December 21st, 2022.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman.
Lafayette Melton, and I second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Melton. Take the roll, vote. Going roll, the chair votes yes. Mrs. Bryant?
Vote aye.
Dr. Coleman?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Melton?
Aye.
Mr. O'Neill?
Aye.
Mrs. Ridley? Absent. Mr. Sanchez?
Yes.
Mrs. Springs?
Aye.
Mr. Vergamini?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Minutes approved. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, cool. All right. Mama Jo, did you have anything else?
No, I think, Mr. Chairman, you're going to be reading the,
Closing statement?
yes, sir.
Yes, okay, thank you. So I will be reading the closing statement under the Open Meetings Act.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at, sorry, Mr. I just question regarding the agenda. I see it has just the item. Are there other items of old business that we will address at some point? Regarding the matters, I understand the one item, but there are several things that were carryover from previous meetings that haven't made the agenda again either, and they may be timely as well.
Which items are those that you're
Um,
referring to?
I think about us talking about meeting schedules to make sure that we can meet the requirement for quarterly meetings with agency heads. I think those are some of the things that we've got to get on the schedule to make happen if we're going to meet that requirement. So that's just one example.
Did you open the new agenda?
I'm open. I got to look and see here.
I cannot open it.
I'm not able to open it either. What was dropped in here? Let me see.
Okay, the new agenda has the old business, which is the administrative hearing board, and then the new business is strategic plan, training, and other administrative items.
Okay, so all right. I'll come back during that session and deal with those things. I see them now.
So, Mr. James?
I will hold off. Yep.
Okay, because I couldn't even open. Okay.
Mr. James, were you able to open it?
Yes, I was
okay.
able to get around and get to that version of it. So I do see those two items on there as well.
Okay.
Again, just looking at other items that have been on previous agendas under business that we did not tend to. And some of those things included that meeting schedule, a vice chair. And like I said, there's some of those other items that you've added on.
Okay. I'm sorry. So we'll come back to that. If that's okay. Denise, is anyone able to send me the agenda, like just in the email? Because I can't. I've been trying. I cannot pull it up.
I'll drop it in the email.
Thank you so much. All right. Mama Jo, that was it?
That was it.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're going to close the meeting to discuss, well, first of all, today's date is January 23rd. So we're going to close the meeting to discuss some personnel matters. So is there anyone that wishes to make a motion to close the meeting?
Mr. Chairman, you need to read the closing statement
Before we, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to we're going to close the meeting to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom this public body has jurisdiction, and any other personnel matters that affects one or more specific individuals. The reason for closing is to select candidates to interview for the administrative hearing board and to finalize interview questions. Does anyone want to make a motion to close the meeting?
This is Lafayette Melton, and I make a motion to close the meeting and enter into closed session.
Thank you, sir.
Tamika Springs, I second it.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Springs. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the roll. Report the roll. Kelvin Navarro, yes. Mr. Bryant.
You're on mute.
Oh, Ms. Bryant, you were on mute.
I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. James,
I'm gonna abstain.
okay. Mr. Melton,
Aye.
thank you, sir. Mr. O'Neill,
Aye.
Mrs. Ridley, absent. Mr. Sanchez,
Yes.
Mrs. Springs,
Aye.
Mr. Vergamini.
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, Ashley's gonna close the session now.
We need a time.
At 7:56 PM, we are back into open session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. All right. So in closed session, we discussed sorry, I'm getting my notes. The candidates for the Administrative Hearing Board. And questions. At this time, I would ask if there is a motion to affirm the 6 candidates for interview.
This is Andrea Coleman. I make a motion to affirm the 6 candidates for the Administrative Hearing Board.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman.
If you don't mind, Dr. Coleman, so that we're consistent with Ms. Bryant's motion that had 2 or more votes.
Oh, excuse me. I amend that motion. I make a motion to affirm the candidates for the Administrative Hearing Board that had 2 or more votes.
Thank
This is
you.
Sheila Bryan, I second.
Thank you. Mr. Law, yes. Mrs. Bryant,
Aye.
Dr. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. James.
For clarity, this vote is for interview, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Just making sure the motion reflects is to interview those 6 candidates. I vote in favor of that.
Mr. Melton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Ridley, absent. Mr. Sanchez,
Yes.
Mrs. Springs, absent. Mr. Vergamini.
Yes.
Okay. Did you get that, Tangi?
I did, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Does anyone make I'm not going to read anybody's mind. Motion to affirm the questions.
I make a motion. Is it Sheila Bryan? I move that we affirm the questions that were decided upon in closed session.
Second, Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Mr. Paul, yes. Ms. Bryant?
Mr. Chair,
Oh,
if I
yeah.
could get a little more specificity, I think it's 9 questions that will be
8.
8. Is it 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
I'd like to amend my motion to affirm the 8 questions that we decided upon in closed session.
Thank you.
This is Ms. Bryan.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Have to second that.
Second again, Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Mr. DeVore, yes. Mrs. Bryant,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Melton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Ridley, absent. Mr. Sanchez,
Yes.
Mrs. Springs, absent. Mr. Vergamini.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. All right. James, you got that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. All right, let me pull up the agenda. Oh, okay. All right. We want to go to moving on to old business on the agenda. Mr. James, I believe you have some questions about something, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was just a couple other things that I know we had talked about, scheduling, meeting types. Again, for me, one of those mandates of the Police Accountability Board is to meet quarterly with the heads of the law.
Can I interrupt for a moment? The agenda has, the next thing on the agenda was Marva, wasn't it?
Mm-mm. It was new business, I think.
Yeah, but the first piece of new business was a strategic plan with your name next to it.
Oh, okay. But I thought we were going to old business. Oh, that's what it was.
Mr. Chair, I think we can follow the agenda, and if there are areas of concern that raised, I think they may fall into some of those areas. So
Okay.
if we can expedite this meeting, I think we'll go ahead through the agenda.
Okay, so thank you. All right, so we'll move on to new business, strategic planning. Marvin Joe.
For the for the purposes of trying to go quickly, the chair, myself, and staff met earlier this week to discuss the strategic plan, which is mandated in some of the duties of the PAB. One of the things we talked about was the areas that we thought needed to be discussed, having to do with issues such as meeting dates, meeting frequency, community outreach, the standard operating procedures. And there are a number of lists that we will give to you as an outline. One of the things in anticipation of the strategic plan is that we will be sending out a survey to each one of you. And the survey really is going to help inform us on those topics that I'm bringing up. So for example, I'll use Tangi. She is having primary responsibility for putting together the community outreach plan. In order to do that, there are some questions that we will have of you in terms of priorities, criteria, and some other things. So you will get those questions and they will be the basis for her putting together the proposed community outreach plan. Similarly, there may be a couple of questions. Denise is taking the guidance that was done by the police reform group and the old CCOP rules that had a number of guidance to make recommendations on the standard operating procedures that this body will follow. I'm just using those as two examples. I do want to mention that we will ask you all to answer those surveys. We will give you ample time, and only those things that are responded to in those surveys will be included in the recommendations that will be made. That does not mean, excuse me, once we get into the strategic planning session that you won't change them, but what will be presented will be based on the survey and the work that the staff is doing now. And so wanted to know, we will be sending you also an outline of the topics that we believe should be included in the strategic plan. And so what we will ask from each one of you is if there are topics inside there that you do not think that we have addressed, we would ask that you also provide that back to the planning team. And you will get a question at the top of the survey, really wanting to know what your 3 top priorities for the work of the PAB, because there are a number of things that are legislatively mandated and others that are discretionary. So we want to make sure as we make those recommendations, they reflect the priorities of the members of the PAB. So that is a very truncated explanation. So if you have any questions, but I think, Mr. James, this is a good time. We've gone to the survey piece in part, trying to be more efficient. We hope it helps too, to have people send it in individually and then have a more broad discussion. And the survey is something we added in the way we were going to approach the strategic plan that was not in our original thought process. So I am open to any questions, please, that will help us as we put together this package for you all.
Mr.
I
James,
see your
yes,
hand.
sir.
I'll restate my question again. I understand the strategic plan. I understand that it's something that's discussed within the report as guidelines and recommendations to put that in. There's a date set that I think the PAB should also talk about some of those dates. But again, I think that that's a great idea long-term. I think there are some short-term goals that we may need to address because the strategic plan may take us a while to develop and then implement, but we still have things like quarterly meetings that are already mandated within the legislation that we haven't prioritized to make happen. And as we're through this month of January, we have about 2 months left within this quarter. The question is how we'll meet some of those mandates with 2 months left to go and other priorities coming ahead. Again, I'm just looking at the strategic plan, and I think it's a great opportunity, but I think we need to prioritize what are our requirements and then get to those things that are discretionary as have been described.
So let me say the strategic plan isn't discretionary. One of the things we will discuss tonight is the timing. And we talked in the last meeting about not doing it quarterly, but doing it. We originally talked about once a month. And then in the last meeting, we talked about doing twice a month. So what you all will be asked tonight will be whether or not we will go to, at least right now, twice a month, and then recommendations for whether it'll be the first and third or the second and fourth. So that will be discussed. That will be discussed today. The second part of it is we have some community outreach responsibilities that we have to get done prior to the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. So those are things that we will have to decide sooner rather than later. There is also a piece of it with respect to meeting with the chiefs. So one of the things we talked about, and I'm going a little ahead of myself, so I apologize, but we will be sharing with you the date tonight of when we believe we will, well, when we know the next chiefs meeting will be, so that we can participate in that. And part of the next discussion is how will we handle our responsibility to meet with those law enforcement entities past, after the chiefs, because we have to do that quarterly as well. So we'll have 2 that we have to do. One of the things that we will be putting together in the community outreach plan is an understanding of what we can handle this year. So one of the things that we will be putting in there as a recommendation is whether or not we will participate in an existing activity, and participate rather than create it. I'm only talking about for this fiscal year, and then whether or not we would do a listening session, but trying to be mindful of people's time and schedule. Let me say this is the last one, Mr. James, and to the whole group. I think you assume that the strategic planning piece is going to take longer because of it have to be done by a certain time. We hope to have this to you in early February and the survey, so that we hope that in February, we will have the strategic planning session to make those decisions, other than the decision about whether or not we would meet twice a month in this February, March, April, or whenever. So we will discuss that this evening. And I think the topics that you might be bringing up will be things that we can decide on today or at the very latest in early February.
If I can add, when Marva was talking about the outreach, the Police Chiefs Association, and I may have the name wrong, in Prince George's County meets monthly. And that's all the police chief from all the municipalities and other law enforcement agencies meet. They have agreed to allow us to be on the agenda for the 28th of February, which will take care of one of those quarterly meetings. And we can decide whether or not we want to attend another one to discuss them, maybe whatever topics we have in mind at another monthly meeting. And because we only have a few months left, we may need to piggyback on those and then plan more events for next year.
And I see, Danny, I see you have your hand up, but let me also say one other thing, because one of the survey question is, we don't know, based on people's schedule and based on the budget. For example, there are different ways that we can do it. We last time talked about HOAs or civic associations. We have talked about whether or not we wanted to do it per councilmatic district. We've talked about, do we want to do north, central, south? So some of those criteria will help us be able to put together that, Tangi, to put together that community outreach. So that's why the survey is so important in helping us shape those kind of issues. But we do know we have to do 2 community outreach and 2 meetings with the chiefs before June 30th. And so we will make sure. We do know that you all at the last meeting said that you thought it would be useful to have 2 meetings a month right now rather than the quarterly or even the once a month. So those are the things we will address immediately. Danny, I'm sorry.
Well,
I just had a quick question about the meeting with the chiefs. You said the chiefs meet once a month, or
Yeah, they meet monthly. The Chiefs.
and is that, with whom do they meet? Is it just each other, the chiefs, or do they meet with other groups?
It's an association, and that's their association meeting.
So it's not the police unions and others and
No.
the public or anything?
Mm-mm.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, my question is this, I mean, I don't have no problem, but and I'm just going by the lawyers. We might can go to their meetings, but I don't want to be a part of their agenda. And we don't get to ask questions or once they tell us what they're doing, you know what I mean?
Well, they wanted us to determine what it is what we wanted to do on their agenda. They're giving us space on the agenda to do what it is we want to do.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just saying.
Answer questions, but the legislation requires that we meet with the head of law enforcement quarterly.
Yeah.
And this is
I
an
understand.
opportunity to meet with all of them in one setting.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm just saying that we have to make sure that we meet with them and things are still in the community is not right, and they just give us some answer, or we're just a part of their agenda. That's what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Well, we will be a part of the agenda, but we get to determine what part of that agenda we want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I did fail to say one other thing is that as part of this, there are some subcommittees. So for example, some of you were very active on helping with the annual report. We think that was useful. So we're gonna try to have a annual report subcommittee. Staff is also working on some best practices and data points that we will ask individual members to volunteer for that. So in addition to the large groups, we will be having kind of these subcommittees based on your desires, but always in light of the budget and your time commitments. Or your time availability, I'm sorry.
So I think from what I'm hearing from everybody is like, this is foundational work, and we have a lot of stuff that we need to put in place, or we need to build from the ground up. And, I just want to echo Mr. James' concern that, some of these are time sensitive. So whether it's the strategic plan or whether it's the meetings, I I just wonder if we need to meet more often so that we can keep these things in front of us and be productive at knocking some of these things out. We've said that we want to try to do interviews, and I guess in a couple weeks' time, I would hope or suggest that we don't just kind of sit until that happens. Like, I think that's precious time where we could be doing other things, because from by all accounts, we have multiple layers of different things that need to be set up in some regards simultaneously.
So you can look, Mr. Melton, so you all are meeting on the 6th and the 9th. Tonight you all will decide if you want to do the 1st and 3rd of every month, or if you want to do once a week. So that is something you need to decide as a body. And once we have that, we will have a meeting schedule, to Mr. James and your point. So that is what we are discussing tonight. And we will have the subcommittees, which it's one thing to have all of you all to do it, but to have a smaller group start working on some of it so we can kind of parse out efficiencies in our time, given how much stuff we have to do.
Mr. James.
Appreciate it, Mr. Chair. Just a couple concerns. One, I understand the efficiency with meeting at the Chiefs Association's meeting, but I have some reservations on the public perception on that. And I think that we need to consider that in going into it, being on their agenda as opposed to them being on ours. And so I think that that's something for us to really think about, as well as the openness of that meeting. As we are trying to make sure we have transparency and accountability as a responsibility of this board, I think we need to exercise that same mantra with the work that we do. And so I think it's something for us to consider. Also, I hear the recommendation on the subcommittees, and I think we tried to do that with the report and was told we couldn't do that. So I'm just trying to understand now how subcommittees may be implemented and be made useful and effective. So again, my bottom line is to use the time effectively. As Mr. Melton said, we've got a lot of things to do. And in a short order to get it done. So I'm all about creating the efficiencies, but I'm absolutely committed to doing the work that has been outlined so that we legitimize this police accountability board, and that those municipalities and others that say that it's weakened and it has no purpose, we don't give them additional fodder to continue to amplify that message.
Thank you, Mr. James. So let me say this, that I think one of the things we can do is to try to use our time wisely, and that's why we looked at doing the polls, because the meetings are going sometimes very, very long over things that I think that we can get through relatively quickly. And so we spend a lot of time on a lot of things where I think we can move a lot quicker than we do. And so we thought about the polls adding to the efficiency of the board and the panel. And so that would kind of cut down on the amount of time that we could meet and discuss those items if we were to send those polls out earlier to get through those things. So hopefully moving forward, those polls, just like meeting virtually and in person, I think that that's an option that we have. That's a choice, one of the choices that we have to utilize as well. So I think that it'll get better. We have a lot of administrative things to get through, and we're crunching for time, but we were all set to move forward, and then we just got pushed with the time going back, with the county council wanting to appoint people as well. So that kind of pushed things back as well. So I understand the time constraints, and I have faith that this board, we will meet our obligations 100%.
So the question on the table right now, I think, is when the frequency of the PAB meetings generally, right? Is that sort of, I think, where Marvin Joe left off, is where we're going to select a regular date. And I think that would be helpful, because then, all of us are super busy and we can get that on our schedules. And then when we have to work on the strategic plan and get assigned to teams, then I think those meeting dates could be a little bit more flexible. But for the board dates, I really recommend that we get those on the calendar as soon as possible.
And locked in.
I'd like to make a motion that we meet every other week until, aside from the upcoming meeting next week, in 2 weeks, that we meet every other week on Wednesdays at 6:30, either virtually or hybrid.
Ms.
Um,
Brown, thank you for that. Can you, because we were struggling a little bit on whether or not you wanted the first and third or the second and fourth. Could you maybe provide that as well to see when people are meeting?
Okay.
As
The
a
second and
motion.
fourth,
Thank you.
the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. Until we, until further notice. That's my
Second.
motion.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill.
So now that that's been made a motion, is it appropriate that I ask questions prior to voting? Because that will
Absolutely.
help me understand better how I would vote.
Yes, sir.
So part of my answer to that is that I actually don't know that we shouldn't meet more frequently than that. But if that's just not realistic, and there's no way around it, then that wouldn't matter. And I would need to basically vote accordingly.
As part of the discussion, it would be helpful if we had a very structured agenda. And that way we would be more certain to get through the things that we have to do. And most likely, if we have surveys, et cetera, that we've been able to communicate certain issues. For instance, everybody makes suggestions about what their additions to our strategic plan or whatever, that perhaps we can get through the meeting and get more accomplished.
Yeah, we will. Thank you, Ms. Brown, for that. We will, as I think we mentioned earlier, we will give you ample time with the survey questions and a time certain that it will have to be returned. For those things not returned in that time frame, they won't be included in what's sent out as the initial recommendation.
And just to sort of piggyback on what Marva Jo just said, I mean, there's so many tools and things. Like, I'm president of another board and we meet monthly. And we have ad hoc committees, but we use, so many platforms to get work done in the interim. And so then that does sort of cut down on the time that we meet. So we also use surveys and Zoho and all these platforms where you can go in and make changes to documents and see stuff in real time. So I think that, if we do meet the second and fourth Wednesday, I think with the work that we're doing in the interim using surveys and other platforms and tools, that we'll be able to move the work maybe even faster.
I truly believe that, and I really am optimistic. I think the way I sort of have a perspective is that I would love if we had those things in place first, and then we scale back, as opposed to taking a real tempered, spread out approach and sort of running up against deadlines and not meet, or potentially not meeting them. I think it's possible. And I think if we put those measures in place, I'm certainly on board with that. It's just because I don't see them, they're not put together right now. And I just have a lower level of confidence than I would otherwise if I knew those things were in place already. So I think part of my suggestion is, to the degree that we can start to put those things in place quicker, if it did mean more meetings more frequently initially, I think we could always scale back once we have those things established.
Mr. James.
As we're considering that motion, I totally get it too. And I think one of the things I said earlier on was we would have to meet more frequently, and then we'd be able to back ourselves into a bi-weekly, into a monthly. I think that we also need a list of items for us to really understand, as Ms. Bryant was saying, what is on our agenda? What is on our plate, so that we can plan accordingly and use our time efficiently? I support us getting started right now with bi-weekly meetings, but I would say once we have some of those meetings, to be open to the opportunity and the possibility of having to meet more frequent, so that we can achieve those goals before those deadlines, not at those deadlines.
Denise.
I'm just trying to get a sense of, I know everybody's saying all of these deadlines we have to meet. Mr. James, can you tell me the things that you have that you know that we're supposed to be doing by a certain deadline? I know that we're supposed to do one meeting a quarter with the police chiefs. We're supposed to do the annual report. And we're supposed to have quarterly meetings regarding the results from the ACC. And those are the mandated functions. And then from the goals that were created by the county, we do the quarterly report. And then we're doing an outreach. And those don't have, I mean, none of those are really date specific.
Mr. Chair, if I can respond to that, if
Mhm.
appropriate.
Sure.
So Denise, I think you're accurate on many of those things as you talked about it. I look at those quarters. I look at, what are we using for the quarter, whether you use the fiscal year or the calendar year, it's still going to be the same 3 months. Question is, are you in the first quarter or the third quarter? And so when we're looking at these things, right, so in the third quarter, based on the fiscal year, our report is going on the calendar year. Totally understand that. And all I'm saying is, maybe we need clarity on whole quarterly meetings with the heads of law enforcement agencies. Is that we're saying as a board, we're adopting the policy of going to the Police Chiefs Association meeting, and that is what's going to put the check in our box, or do we have to plan for some other strategy so that we meet those quarterly meetings? Just like
We have to plan for other strategies. I'm just saying to get us through
I
this.
understand. I'm just saying I let you say that piece, but I didn't interrupt. But that's all I'm saying is I think we need to make some decisions as a board.
I do want to make clear that we have 2 remaining quarters. We have this quarter and then the January through March and then April through June. And so we have 2 community outreaches that will be required and 2 meetings with law enforcement that will be required to meet the obligations that we have under the legislation. So as we talk about it, know that that's what we, have to do. If the board decides that there are things more that they want to do, that's a discussion. But at a minimum, that's what we're required to do.
And we also, at some point, are going to want to prepare to start reviewing cases, right?
Once people make cases to review, right, after the ACC starts a meeting.
Ms. Bryant has her hand up.
I'm sorry, Ms. Brown.
You're on mute, Mrs. Bryant.
From my understanding and based on the annual report, there've been 40 complaints so far since we've been established. And I guess and then what I'm trying to say is that those will have to be reviewed and addressed so that we'll have something to discuss with the police in a quarterly meeting. So I would say we schedule that at the end of March and it'd be our agenda, not theirs. That if they meet, perhaps we can use one of their meetings as a kickoff. I'm not sure, but we need to have it by, I think by the end of March for one of our quarterly meetings. And then outreach has to be also during the period between now and March, which this month is virtually over. So that's my comment. That's all.
Mr. Vergamini.
I had just sort of a question about issues that we could look at. I know we can look at any issues that arise, if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that we can review any issues that arise from cases that are brought to the ACC. And so we can sort of have a grander oversight of strategic issues that may come from multiple cases. Are we able to look at additional issues that we choose to look at? So say, for example, a hiring practice that may not come from the cases, or we may decide that it does. But if we want to look at, and I'm picking this topic not coincidentally, but because this is in the national oversight dialogue, which is how some of the departments may hire officers that have been fired from other departments and what kind of screening processes or policies they may have. So for example, that may not come from a particular case or a series of cases. Now we could extrapolate that it does, but it might be a bit of a stretch. So my question is this, is can we, when we get to that point, are we able to look at those kinds of issues? And I'm asking, I guess, for scope of practice kind of question of, is that something we're able to do, or are we confined to just those issues or those items that may come directly from cases? And I ask this because it may affect later down the road as we want to, our time commitments, as we may want to create requests for information, or we may want time to review responses from departments as we examine different issues that come up.
Denise, you had your hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I never took it down.
Oh, I thought you wanted to address Danny's question.
Right.
Oh,
If we need to answer it later, that's fine too. I guess I'm just kind of lobbing that out there as a question for time commitment. You know, is that something that we're constrained on, or is that something that, because that may take a lot more, you know, as we're kind of talking about, as we look at some of those issues, and that's partly why I think many of us are here, is to really look at some of these oversight issues. Is that something that then are we going to want to meet more often and do some of those things?
I think that's a
think-
Barbara Joe question to get some clarity from the Office of Law on the legislation, because I don't think the legislation specifically, the legislation only addresses reviewing the results of decisions made by, as I understand it, made by the ACC. Now, I don't know if it
Well, I think it talks about
strategy.
strategic issues and strategic challenges with departments and so forth. I forget exactly how it's phrased, but the idea is that we're supposed to be able to look at broader strategic challenges that come up.
Policies and practices, absolutely.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's a Marva Joe question rather than, I heard somebody call my name, but I think that's more appropriately answered by Marva Joe.
That's fine. But again, for me, that lends us to wanting to meet maybe more often to be
Well-
able to look at some of those issues.
Are you
So
saying
the-
more often than twice per month?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm used to meeting perhaps weekly. You know, I mean, that's just,
So there are a
And
couple of
maybe-
things.
maybe yes,
There-
maybe no.
There are a couple of things. One, the legislation is fairly broad. I mean, and we have the opportunity on best practices and some kind of oversight. One of the things that the strategic planning process should inform us on is the scope of how we want to approach our recommendation. So that will come up in that context. And I know I have said this 100 times, and I'm saying it on behalf of Denise. We have to, in all that we do, be cognizant of budgetary constraints. So when the county came up with the budget for this year, there, you know, we have but so much time. And if we start meeting, go beyond that, then we're going to have to go back to the county and have a reason for doing so. I think, Denise, you're in the process now for.
Yeah, we've already submitted the budget for
For the FY
2024.
24, right. So as we do that, we also need to be able to be cognizant of the time that you all spend and what budgetary impact that has.
Yeah, but I think also, and I don't want to put no words in nobody's mouth, but I think what I'm hearing from some people is that we want to get up so we can be on the speed. We started late, and we want to get up to speed to other people in the state, the counties and stuff, so that we don't have administrative issues, and we can talk, like I said, to what Danny was talking about, what we can talk about concerns that we have with the police chiefs and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I think that's the frequency of the meeting, to get the most of the administrative stuff. And then we can go where we can go, if once a month, twice a month, or quarterly. That's what I'm looking at. Because I think it is some questions that we want to ask some of the police chiefs and stuff like that as it relates to, you know, their hiring practices, you know, what new ideas, what thinking out of the box they're trying to do as far as to make the policing in the county better, you know what I mean?
So because we're on a motion that was Ms. Bryant's original motion, I believe, which was the frequency until further decided. So, and I think the discussion Mr. James brought up, and I think Mr. Melton also, the perhaps needing to do more frequently. So if I could get you all to vote on the second and fourth motion, if that fails, then someone else is free to offer another motion. But at least we can get some sense
You
of
mean
the
the first and the third,
first. What did you say, Mr. Bryan? I'm sorry. First and third, and second and fourth.
The second and fourth Wednesday at 6:30.
Right. So if we could, so we can get some clarity as to what the body's desire is. And then if that's not the desire, to go to the next one in hopes that, you know, we can get to the next stage.
Thank you. And do you recall that we were stopped off at the votes?
There was no vote. There was
There's
just-
no, we made the vote and then Mr. Mountain asked for discussion. Okay,
Yes.
all right, cool. And who seconded? Give me one second.
somebody second?
I think Mr. O'Neill second.
O'Neill.
Oh, it did, yeah.
Okay. All right, so now we will go and take the vote for the second and fourth Wednesday of the month at 6:30 p.m. Ms. Bryant,
Yes.
Dr. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. James.
Aye.
Mr. Melton,
You're on mute. You're on mute.
there you go.
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mrs. Rentley, absent. Mr. Sanchez,
No.
okay. Mrs. Springs,
Aye.
Mr. Vergamini,
I would like to meet at least that often, so I will vote yes plus.
Mhm.
That's a vote.
That don't count as a vote, Danny, but okay. You voting yes?
Sure, yes, but that am I clear that we can meet more often than that? You're suggesting meet at least that often on a regular basis, is that correct?
yes.
Okay,
We are
yes, then
trying
yes.
to- Okay, we're trying to do the calendar, which was one of the requests of the panel, so.
Exactly.
Okay,
To Danny's point and others, I think that frequency we now have agreed to is twice a month. I think now we need to get a clear agenda so we know whether twice a month is going to be how often we need to meet or if we need to make some adjustment. But I think we want to get moving. So the twice a month is kind of our nudge to say, let's get it outlined, let's get a plan, and then let's get moving. And if we need to do more often, if we need to do less, if we can find the efficiencies, I think everyone's open to it, but we need to understand what's on the plate so that we can get it addressed.
And I don't know if everybody has voted. I'm sorry, I'm being a little anal. Did you vote, Mr. Duval, Chairman?
I'm sorry, no, Mr. Duvall votes yes.
Okay, is that everybody having voted now?
Yes,
So that begins, that begins, and so we know that is on the calendar for
yes,
everybody, second and fourth at 6:30.
yes.
All right, and to your,
So isn't next Wednesday the fourth Wednesday? So we
Next
would
Wednesday is the
start-
first Wednesday. The day is the fourth Wednesday.
Is it?
Mhm.
Yeah, the next
Next
Wednesday is the first or
Today is
third.
Monday. So
Today's Monday.
Wednesday.
But it would be the first.
Wednesday is the fourth Wednesday.
Yeah.
Of
But
the
so,
month.
so,
2
And
days
you
from now
all
is the
also, that means you all have the first let me look. Y'all right? So y'all have the 1st of February, the 4th of February, or what is it, the 6th, 4th and 6th?
No,
Mm-mm.
no. So what we're saying is that we would start meeting January 25th, 2 days from now.
Right.
Which is the 4th Wednesday.
Mhm.
And then the 2nd and 4th Wednesday in February would be the 8th and the 22nd.
But you also have the interviews, which are the,
8th, the
Which
16th.
comes back to meeting in addition to those minimum times.
Right.
right. Just want
Right, that's a special meeting though. That's for a specific purpose. So what I'm saying is, I think we should begin the schedule in February. And that the first meeting for the interviews will be an extra meeting. Those meetings are not occurring on Monday and Wednesday, so those, in my view, don't count. We start on the 2nd Wednesday in February and the 4th Wednesday in February as starting the schedule. These are extra meetings that we're calling for the specific purpose of interviews.
Okay, so are you amending your motion?
Well, we've already voted on it.
You see, only thing is am I looking at this right? Yes. I am.
Okay, again, and this is just for the record because we're on record and, Marva Joe wants to make sure that we're being clear in the record about this. Is that something, and I'm asking because if we don't need to do it, then we don't need to do it. Do we need to amend the motion or anything, or is it kind of clear that that's the case?
Starting in February, right, Mrs. Bryant? Was that stated?
Well, I can make a second motion that we begin the schedule in February, as of February.
well, you don't,
Yeah.
okay, you
If we
will.
don't need to, then we don't need to. But if we do need to, then let's just do it.
Well, wouldn't it just, the second interview would be just our first meeting? Wouldn't,
No, because that's
With
the
the
first
8th.
week of February.
yeah, that's the first week, yeah.
It's technically the second.
It's
that's
the second,
Wednesday.
it's the
That's-
second.
Oh, okay.
So
well-
it would be on your regular, on
Right.
one of your, the 8th is a regular,
Okay,
Meeting.
Yes.
but the,
but
but
Monday wouldn't be.
Monday's a
Monday, yeah.
special meeting. Okay,
Monday, yeah, right.
okay.
So for clarity, on this, on Wednesday, you're not gonna start, you won't meet on this Wednesday. Is that what we're understanding?
Yeah,
That's
we
my
meet this Wednesday.
intent.
Huh?
No,
That would be my consideration, that we not meet Wednesday since we're meeting today.
That's what I understood you to say, yeah. Unless we have
Meeting
such
on
pressing
the-
business
Ms.
that we need
Bryant
to.
was saying starting the 2nd and 4th, starting in February, not this month.
Right.
Isn't that right?
Yes,
So the first meeting will be on February 8th, correct?
Right.
the
Right.
first
Everybody-
regular meeting.
Regular meeting.
Right,
The next meeting will be February 6th. The
Right.
first regular meeting will be the 8th.
right, okay.
And so then that begs the question for us. We've gone back and forth about the strategic plan and whether or not you want those meetings to be part of the regular meetings or set up as special meetings.
When is the strategic plan due again, please?
We don't. That was another question so that we could
Mr.
know how
James,
to proceed. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Mr. James.
I was saying you got hands raised, bro.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Bryant,
Sanchez has his hand raised.
Sanchez. I'm sorry, Mr. Sanchez. Thank you, Mr. James. I'm just looking at my calendar. My apologies.
Thank you. So just to clarify then, if we start in February, the first regular meeting that we would have scheduled per our schedule would be the 8th of February, which we've already voted to establish as interviews, which means that we wouldn't be able to touch on our agenda until the fourth Wednesday of February. Right? So we won't be getting any work done. We won't be meeting to discuss agenda, to discuss all these items that have been brought up by various people during this meeting until the 4th Wednesday of February, if we continue on this plan right now.
Unless we choose to meet in addition to that.
Right. So I think
Can I comment on that?
yes.
Okay, so we're only interviewing 3 people. on Monday and 3 people on Wednesday. So that would take maybe 30 or 45 minutes to interview them, say 15 minutes per person. Or at any rate, I recommend that we use the Google Doc or Teammate, whatever it is. We can all put ideas about the strategic plan on there, and we can think about it before we get to a meeting and discuss it during the meeting. It doesn't have to be this hard. I think that that for the next meeting on Wednesday, that there be prior to the meeting, that we have all contributed to a common document where we can add our input as to what we think should be on our strategic plan. As for and for outreach.
So if you will, couple of things. I wanted to go back to the question. There's nothing that prohibits you from having the interviews and doing business on that Wednesday, if you all are so inclined. That's one. The second one is we are going to provide you all with a process, because we only have a certain amount of time to try to work on the outline of the strategic plan. So what I mentioned to you all at the beginning, we're going to give you a proposed outline for the topics and ask you to respond to make sure we're covering in that everything that people want to know. The second thing we're going to do is a survey that will inform certain pieces of the strategic plan. It is too hard, even if you do Google Docs, to try to manage all of you, no disrespect, of trying to put this together. We need you to respond to something so that we have a structure. I mean, I don't mind getting paid more, but it will take a lot more time if we do it that way. So we'll give you an outline and we'll give you the survey. Ask you to start with that, and then that will help us create the strategic plan framework. And then we will do it for each section of the strategic plan. And we hope that way that we make sure we are including everything that each board member is interested in seeing.
I have a question too, as to the budget. Was the president or any of the members involved in deciding on the budget, or do we know what's in the budget, or do we have a say at all?
Denise can talk to that, but let me just say, we weren't even in existence when that budget had to be worked on.
Okay.
I mean, this was, the one that you're under now, which
No,
is,
I'm talking about for 24. She said she's already submitted.
oh, you're
Yeah,
talking
the
about
2024 budget was submitted prior to your first meeting. We're now in sessions where we're discussing a budget with OMB. The next session would be to discuss it with the executive staff. But the budget process started in earnest in October.
Okay.
I wanted to thank you, Marva Jo, for that. I think those words and sort of how you've laid out that plan helps, because I think if we get a starting point and we have topics and issues that we can discuss, it might make the conversation a little bit more efficient that we have, so we don't kind of run around in circles. I will just say that I think my main concern is that it seems as if though usually we're able to get more work, more conversation done when we're meeting versus not. For example, I know there were questions over how we handled the process for selecting who to interview. And the participation, I think if we look at the total number of votes, the participation doesn't reflect the membership of the board. So I just think, to kind of echo what you said, it's important that we all do participate and provide feedback and information for that work to be done outside of meeting to be valuable, because if not, then we kind of do have to be here in person, because that seems to be when we can have a more a better conversation where everyone provides some input.
and I think you make a good point, today, for example, and thanks to Ashley who kept reminding, but we didn't get stuff till 4 o'clock. Now, when we do the survey and others, we'll be asking for it a lot earlier than that, because we want you all to have a chance to be able to review and opine and talk about. So I think it's going to be really important that people respond in a timely manner so we can get the information back out to you in a timely manner. I also want to say, I know you all are talking about weekly, but you also got a staff that got other things that they are responsible for. So we also have to make sure we have enough time to take what we're given, to put it in some format, to send it back out to you. And sometimes if you're meeting very frequently, it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to put together a thoughtful product for review.
Any more hands in Ms. Dr. Coleman?
Actually, Barbara Joe just read my mind is exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you guys have done a wonderful job of facilitating the work. And so that would be my concern as well, is that if we meet, then it'll be difficult for the staff to turn around and get it back to us. And I can say about the deadlines, I think this time of year is a little bit anomalous. Because we're just coming off of the holidays and all that stuff. And sometimes people are, just a little slower to get back and do things. I know I am. I can only speak for myself. So I'm one of the guilty parties here that was not as responsive as I normally am during the holidays. But now that all of that's sort of settled and that we've discussed, I think we all know now that the expectation is that if we receive things, that we respond when requested and those kinds of things. So I think we should at least try it out and see how we do moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Is it feasible to set a date that we'd like to establish as our quarterly meeting with the police departments? Or should we discuss that at another meeting?
Well, let me just say something about that. This one was meeting with the police chiefs. Part of that was to have an introductory meeting. You all will, as part of that strategic plan, decide how you want to do that. Do you want to meet with them all together? Is there municipalities? So part of this is deciding what it means to meet with the police chiefs quarterly. So there's some questions that you all will have to address before you set those dates. And I'm going to apologize in advance because the survey is probably going to be very extensive, just so we make sure we are getting your views on a wide range of topics that we don't know necessarily how you all feel.
Okay. So going back to Mr. Sanchez at the beginning, you get your question answered, Mr. Sanchez, about the meeting date. I thought you were saying that we wouldn't be able to start working until the 4th week of February. So we're okay with what we've already established and voted on. So, okay. Denise, are you there?
What did you say?
I was asking what you did, because I see you were next on the agenda.
I can't understand you.
I was saying that you were next on the agenda. I asked Mr. Sanchez, he probably couldn't understand. He didn't want to embarrass me.
Well, I think some of the things we already talked about it. The only thing I need to talk about, I think, is on the training was for you all, and I guess the survey will inform me of that. The kind of training, the things that you think you need to be trained on. I spoke to the the person that does the Citizens Police Academy, and they've agreed to do an abbreviated version of the academy to give you a flavor of what the academy is. And if you want to, on your own, participate in the academy, which is a 13-week, I believe, a 13-week academy. We also need to schedule the full ethics training. You were given a briefing that first night. And then whatever other training that you all decide as a group that you want me to schedule for you. So you can begin to think about the kinds of training that you'd like to have. One other training session is enhanced, judgmental shooting, enhanced judgmental shooting, which they used to be referred to as shoot, don't shoot.
Mhm.
And the next thing, we talked about the outreach already. And again, I just want to reiterate that the outreach, we're kind of combining the outreach with the Chiefs meeting so that we can fulfill this obligation for this year, with the understanding that we won't be going to the Chiefs meeting every quarter as our outreach, but just trying to meet the targets for this year and the next 2 quarters, or the next 1 quarter, because I'm only proposing 1 meeting, that's the February meeting, as our meeting with the Chiefs, the head of law enforcement. We would have to come up with something else for that final quarter of the year.
Okay.
And I think we talked about the meeting times and the meeting dates. So I guess that was pretty much all that was on my portion of the agenda.
Meeting time. Okay.
And excuse me, Denise, can I piggyback on something you said?
Mhm.
I spoke with the president of the Police Chiefs Association. They're allowing us to come in and give us about 30 minutes for introductions, and then you guys can just, decide your talking points, who's gonna come. They do meet monthly on the 4th Tuesday of every month. So we're gonna meet with them on February 28th, but it's gonna be a brief 30-minute section on their agenda. So hopefully that will help you guys.
And to repeat that this is not being proposed that we meet with them in their sessions every quarter. Just at this first meeting in February, be with them, and we can knock out 1 quarter's requirement to meet with them.
We had a location of that and the time.
I think this one's going to be virtual.
Oh, okay. Okay. So with
Am I
everything.
right, Tangi? Is it virtual?
I'll need to confirm. Sometimes they meet virtually, sometime in person. So I did advise the police chief or president that we would allow him or give him our talking points, and we can confirm it, all of that information, the location, the time. Usually it's 10 o'clock in the morning on the 4th Tuesday.
Yeah,
The location is to be determined.
yeah, but
Hold on, Mr. James had to hand that.
okay, go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Quick question, just if there are any constraints for us meeting as a group in that setting, as far as it being an open meeting. I guess that's more towards Marva Joe, just trying to get some clarity on that piece.
Well, that is an administrative function that we're required to do. So it's not our meeting. So yes, and we're not using it to circumvent. So yes, we would be fine. But Mr. James, I do think we are fine, but I'm always about perception. So, and I know that was kind of what you were getting to. So I'm going to have a conversation about that, and we'll get back to you, because
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then it's a whole bunch of citizens in the county who appreciate that too.
Yes, sir.
Neil?
Hmm?
Mr. O'Neill, you were getting ready.
Yeah. I mean, when I maybe my concept, maybe it's like Mr. James, but I don't want to go to the police for us to present something to them. They got to tell us. I'm looking for them to tell us what they're doing to make public safety better, or the police in the eyes of the citizens better. You know what I mean? What trends and stuff like that. I don't want to go and, that I got to pull questions or things from them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
I mean, they're not doing me a favor by meeting with them. I think the legislation says that they got to meet with us to tell us what they're doing to make things better. You know what I mean? them putting us on their agenda, they ain't doing me a favor. I mean, that's why I look at, maybe I gotta go back and read the legislation. You know what I mean? But I'm just me.
Okay, anybody else have questions on that? Yes, sir, Mr. Bergamini.
Would it be helpful for us to, kind of as we've done before, to generate questions and maybe come back at our next meeting of things that we would like to discuss or ask the police chiefs?
That's an option.
I mean, we can discuss it, then we can all bring back ideas of things that we want to ask them or things that we would like to hear from them.
Yeah.
I think it is important, though, to at least do introductions and sort of feign politeness, if nothing else, of the protocol of introducing the two bodies to each other. What do you guys think?
I'm okay with that. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. James.
I would say, pulling on some other experience, Danny, the perception will be the Police Accountability Board reached out to the association. If I'm the mayor of some city and I ask my chief of police, has the Police Accountability Board reached out to you? I could confidently say no. But the responsibility is for the Police Accountability Board to reach out to the head of law enforcement agencies. And so I think we need to make sure we understand that expectation, come together as a consensus, come to consensus as a group, and make sure we're executing in that way. But again, I think it's accountability, transparency, and public perception goes a long way. So I understand what you're saying, coming together with those questions, but we may need to make sure that we are making the ask. We should get those questions, but I tread lightly on sending those questions that way.
I certainly don't disagree with you. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It sounds like, though, we could come up with questions or things, even if we provide those ahead of time and say, these are the things we expect to hear from you. I mean, maybe we're saying two different things, or maybe we're saying close to the same thing. I'm not sure.
Close to the same thing, but I think that the way it's set up is we're giving a presentation to them. They aren't giving a presentation to us.
Well, I wonder if it's, and I don't mean this in any kind of way, is it a semantic difference where we're getting on their calendar and so forth, but as you said, we're not making a presentation. This is not something where we say, hey, this is who we are and what we do. There is sort of a matter of protocol of introducing ourselves and saying, going around the room by name kind of thing, which would seem to be normal to me. But we could provide a list ahead of time and say, these are the questions we would like you to speak to us about when we come to your meeting. Is that what you're kind of saying?
What I'm saying is we could do that, but we're talking about 30 plus agencies. And I don't think we're going to get a response to 30 plus agencies when they've said you've got 30 minutes on our agenda to dedicate to this.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you're right. Maybe that's better for a written request and response then for us to consider. And then would we have questions about that? Maybe.
And the responses may be different from each agency. As you alluded to earlier, what are the hiring processes at agency A may not be the same as B versus C. And I'd like to hear those things, as you said, if we're trying to get to some policy changes. But again, I think there are a lot of in-depth conversations for us to have. I think we're on a trajectory to get there. I think we just need to try to put some structure around it, some plans. We got some dates, which is great. Noted, it'll be a month before we get back to some of these things, but we'll make it happen.
I do like that idea, Danny, of perhaps it is presenting that or giving that to them ahead of time. But if we could come up with a handful of big picture policy items that we have questions about, just as information gathering, and we say, hey, you don't have to have the answers necessarily for us when we meet. It's a chance for us to kind of introduce ourselves, them to introduce themselves to us, but then to give a timeline for when we would expect to have responses back.
So
I think that would be valuable information that would help us in what you talked about earlier in terms of really taking a look at policy, any policy recommendations we might want to make.
So one of the things that we do in my line of work, and I know there's a couple of folks this will sound familiar with, is we do what's called entrance conferences. And that's basically where you show up and you say, hi, this is us. This is what we're doing. This is our project. This is our authority. This is our scope of our project. This is what we're going to be looking at. Here's our main objectives. And here's what you can expect. Where you can expect that we're going to ask you questions and that we're going to conduct a bunch of interviews, and we expect full cooperation because, again, here are our authorities to do that. And here's the timeline that we're working on. What questions do you have? So it seems as though we could do something similar. And again, it's not necessarily a presentation of, hey, this is the PAB and this is what the PAB does. They should all know that by now, because they help formulate a lot of the processes. They were all in on those meetings. So to sit there and introduce us and introduce the PAB seems a courtesy, but slightly disingenuous from my view, because they know what we do. They've read the law, and they had all of these dozens and dozens of meetings to go over implementing the law. So we could do something like that, of basically saying, constructing a small thing saying this is what we can expect, and these are our top issues, or these you can expect to get some requests for information, and this is the timeline that we'll generally want to have that turned around, and thank you, and we look forward to your cooperation, kind of thing. And then, I mean, typically when, like in my line of work, if we do a request for information to an organization or to a particular office or bureau or whatever of the department, we expect something turned around within 10 days or within 2 weeks. And it's on them to put it together and get us back the information, and we can go then interview anyone we want. And it's a different realm slightly, but it's similar.
Denise. So
No, I just wanted to address what Danny said about they all know. There were only a handful of the chiefs, and I mean probably 4, that were involved in the planning process, and you'd be surprised at how many of them don't know what's going on with this law. I know they should have read it, they should know it, but there are quite a few of them who don't. And we get calls
It
a
seems
lot
like,
and asking.
yeah, I take your point, and that's I'm not dismissing your point at all. I'm saying it's on them and their in-house attorneys within their respective general counsel to read the law and be aware of the oversight process. I don't think it's up to us to inform them of what the PAB's duties and responsibilities are.
Oh,
I
no,
mean,
no, no.
maybe it is.
I
but-
wasn't trying to say that. I was just correcting
Right.
the statement you made about how, that you thought all of them knew about it. Now, I'm not saying that we go out and educate them. I'm just clearing up what you were saying and
Okay.
advising everybody that that wasn't the case. They were not all involved in this. There might have been 5 at the most that were involved.
Okay.
And they were probably the larger municipalities and not anything like Morningside or the smaller ones.
Okay, so it begs the question then, when they offered us this time, what is it that they're asking of us? What is it that they want to hear from us? And I see I see James shaking his head. What is it? And the follow-on question then is, what is it that we want? How do we want to spend that time? Which is, I think, what we're trying to figure out here.
They're not asking anything of us because they didn't ask us to come. I actually proposed us using this, and we have not confirmed our attendance anywhere. I proposed
Okay.
using this to fulfill one of our obligations under the law, was to meet with head of law enforcement agencies once a quarter. That was an easy lift, a low-hanging fruit to
Yeah.
take care of 1 quarter.
Well, in that case, do we want to, again, make sort of very minor introductions of just kind of name, and this is who I am kind of thing, and this is the body that we are, and kind of give them a heads up. Please expect requests for information, and we expect you to comply. I mean, what do you guys think? Is there something else that we want to get out of that meeting, or that we want to what is it that we want to sell them or say?
I mean, I think, and I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion. I do like the notion of it being an introductory interview that serves a couple purposes. I don't think it's the ultimate consistent purpose that we want to have or the consistent relationship that we want to have with the Chiefs, but I think this initial meeting can just serve the purposes that we wanted to serve, which is to be introductory, but also, have the option of setting a certain tone, but also serving to satisfy the requirement that we have. And I think that's okay. I don't think it will stand as sort of the standard that we have with them. So I think it can just be what it is. And I don't know that we have to necessarily, I think we should be prepared. I think we should take advantage and optimize the meeting, but I don't think we have to have expectations that, it stands as the meeting standard that we're going to have going forward.
Oh, I would agree with that. I would agree that we would certainly, as we go into other meetings, we're going to be asking them a lot more pointed questions, and it's going to get a little bit more interrogatory on our part.
Okay. So Denise, would you be able to, I don't know, I think I saw Tangi's hand up, she may have dropped it, but would you be able to, all of those outreaches that you named, the community outreach, with the Chiefs, and the training, would you be able to, somebody put that on a document, email it to us, so we can take a look at that as well? Hello?
I
I'm not,
think we're trying to put the different things together as we,
okay,
so that's also part of the survey stuff and the outreach piece. So
okay.
we don't have it yet to email, Mr. Chair. I apologize. Other than that one meeting.
Anybody else have anything about that? About training? Okay, cool. Any more hands? All right, so
Mr. Chair, I just, because January 28th comes before our next scheduled meeting, is there a yay or a nay to meeting with the Chiefs?
Wasn't that February 28th, Tangi?
Oh, which one? I thought you said
February 28th.
February. Oh, okay. So we have some time.
Yeah, we haven't confirmed our participation. That was just an ask until the body just gave us the go ahead for us to confirm. I just need to know, do you all want us to move forward with that?
As an introductory, could you all let us know, let staff know?
okay, sure, it's today. By Friday, is that too late?
No?
Okay,
Mr. Chair, is it possible for them to
now,
do it now?
okay, all right,
If we don't do that, we're gonna have to start looking at other things inside this first quarter. So it would be helpful tonight if we would know if the body will say yes to it as a introductory meeting.
okay, someone will make a motion to do that, or we just go around and say yes or no and decide?
Can we just pull the body?
Okay. So Ms. Bryant, would you be okay with that?
That being, having the February 28th meeting be set as the date for us to meet with the quarterly meet with the heads of the police?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Yes,
As an introductory meeting.
Right,
frankly, because of all the other things we need to do, I would say we should do it on a different day as a separate meeting, not our regular.
I'm
meeting.
sorry, Miss Bryant, I'm having trouble hearing you. Maybe just me, but you sound low. Could be just me. Let me turn my mic up.
Okay, what I said was I would prefer that it be a separate time and place, and that it be an introductory meeting with the police departments and not a regular scheduled meeting. That's my preference.
No, Ms.
The
Bryant,
28th is a
the one
Tuesday.
is with the Chiefs meeting. This is February 28th meeting with
That's a
their.
Tuesday meeting.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, yeah.
There
I don't
is
have a
their
problem.
meeting. We would just go.
Yeah,
Okay, yes, I don't have a problem with that.
okay, cool.
As an introductory meeting, yes.
Okay. Dr. Coleman,
So are we voting or are we just?
just
are we
going
look-
around, just polling the members.
Oh, yeah, no, I concur with Ms. Bryant. I don't have a problem either.
Okay, cool. Mr. James?
No.
Okay,
I don't think we have the time, and there's some other questions that I've elevated with concerns before making that decision. So right now it's a no.
okay. Mr. Melton? One more time.
Still on mute.
I keep going between the two. Sorry. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Mr. O'Neill, sir?
Yeah, just allows the introduction, yeah, I guess so.
My name is Mr. Sanchez.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, Mrs. Springs,
Yes.
Mr. Bergamini,
Yes, that works for me.
and the chair, Calvin Duvall, yes. Okay, so that was at 10 a.m., correct, Denise or Tangi? I think it was 10 a.m.
Angie has the time.
Okay, I think she said 10 a.m.
Yes, 10 a.m., but I'll confirm
Okie dokie.
and the location.
Okay, and we'll just make sure that they understand that this is not a session for them to ask us questions or anything like that. Like, we're
Wait.
not,
Wait a minute, it's 10 a.m. on a Tuesday?
Correct.
yes,
But no, I mean, I got a job. I can't be
That's
attending that. If they can move it to the evening, great. But I mean, I got a day job.
That's their stationary meeting, isn't it? That when they meet though, isn't it?
yeah, I think that's their standing time.
Well, then they can meet another time and they can adjust. Or we can meet with them a separate time other than their regular meeting.
So,
That's what I was trying to say earlier.
okay, so how about
It's
Tangi?
doing us a favor. We don't need them to do us a favor.
Go ahead, Mr. James, I saw you reaching, go ahead.
I was, Mr. O'Neill, I'm all the way with you, but you voted to do it. I'm just trying to understand.
I don't have no problem at
Vote
10
didn't match
o'clock in the
what you just
morning.
said.
No, I'm saying is that I have no problem at 10 o'clock. But what I'm saying is still, if it's an introduction, that's what I'm saying.
And
But-
those of us who can't be there, this is an introductory meeting. We're not going to discuss any business. It's just whoever can go will go to meet with them. And then we'll set a date for our meeting, official quarterly meeting.
Mr. Sanchez, I think your hand is getting ready to go up, so go ahead, sir.
I mean, at that point, then I don't think there would be a point to meet. Because if we're saying whoever can make it, we're not going to discuss business, then that meeting wouldn't meet the requirement of the legislation for us.
Right.
So at that point, I think it's counterproductive for us because now we're just having a meeting where we're just showing some people's faces and then
Right,
the recommendation, the work that we have to do is based off the legislation has very particular language as to what these meetings should be about. So I
Do
think.
you anticipate that we'll have cases that we will have reviewed by then? That the ACC will be in place and that we will have information from them and a report? I don't think so. So we're talking a month from basically to next Monday, a month from, no, Saturday, a month from Saturday. The ACC will not be in place, so we won't have the opportunity to discuss cases with them.
Sure, and
The only thing.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
So it's just like okay, here we are, type of meeting. And no, I agree with you that it may not satisfy our requirement for a quarterly meeting, but the intent of the quarterly meeting is to discuss policies and practices, which we won't have any idea about until attending their meeting and finding out what they do and just saying, we're here. And
Right.
here's what we're going to do.
Right, so then that, and maybe, I apologize, maybe because it's just the semantics of it, but then that sounds different than what you had said just a couple minutes earlier, where you said no business will be conducted, where we'll just, if the group decides, okay, not to get too off track, but if the group decides that whoever can go at that meeting has the voice and the ability to represent the entire group, then it would be important for us, as Danny had mentioned, to show up maybe even with a couple of requests for information that we could get from them that could come in written form later on, that would be for a benefit of the group. That would be a meeting that at least would give us a little meat on the bone, but the members who wouldn't be able to make that meeting would have to be comfortable empowering those that are able to go to represent the board entirely and present some sort of letter that requests information or something like that. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here, in terms of if we go, then there is some work that's being done, some policy discussion that's happening. Of course, we won't have cases to discuss, but we also don't know how this huge number of agencies is operating right now, right? We have an idea, but we don't really know for sure. And so even if this is an introductory meeting and our plan is to still have a quarterly meeting where we'll be able to have a more policy-driven conversation, the first quarter ends in March, right? And so at least this way, we would be able to ask for some information in February and maybe set up a meeting, a follow-up meeting in March, where we would be able to have some policy discussions. But I think we just need to make sure that the intent of this initial meeting is very clear. And to Danny's sort of concern, if there are members that can't be present because we all have day jobs, then we have to be comfortable empowering those that can be present for that meeting to be able to speak with the voice of the board entirely.
So if to that, there are a couple of things. One is the likelihood of you all scheduling something with the police chiefs in the first quarter other than this is very small. The second is we've done an annual report. There might be some opportunity to share what we were able to do, this time, and also talk to them about our vision and how we would like to meet with them going forward, what we want. I mean, Mr. O'Neill, you made a comment about, I want to hear this, that, and the other. There are things that and maybe we can put that vision and agenda on the table and talk about a framework for how we move forward with them. So I think there are a lot of things that could be accomplished. And I don't think those who can attend should be free to say anything. I think this body comes up with the agenda, and then the people who attend have to stick with that agenda. But what I don't want to happen, this is me, I don't want us to not be in compliance with that third quarter requirement. That's a concern.
The only other thing is that I think we took a vote before they knew what time it was gonna be.
Danny, what was
Well, you guys did a poll. You didn't do a vote.
Okay, we just did.
Yeah, we didn't pass an amendment or anything
Okay.
or make a motion. It was just a
Okay.
poll to kind of, and it sort of led to this discussion, which I think is good.
It's a great discussion, and
I'm comfortable with sort of a meet and greet initially and just kind of delay down or ask or manage some expectations of how we want to move forward. And again, as Marvin Joe points out, to be in compliance, to kind of say that we've met and to have that initial, hey, this is who we are and this is kind of what we expect. In our next conversations, we'll be asking more serious questions or asking more pointed questions, and we can come up with those later. But
and then for Mr. James, I think that may address to some extent the perception, because all this is nice to meet you, not a meeting, but we do want you to know our vision for going forward and what your expectations, are. and that would be clear on the agenda that would be put on the website. So that there was no, that this isn't a meeting to speak, it's just it's an introduction.
So, not to interject, but someone announced it, and I'm gonna have to take a bathroom break. So are we close to finishing up some business, or do we all need to take a break?
Is there anything left on the agenda?
I thought Mr. James had one other thing that he mentioned. I'm not sure. That, didn't you had about 2 or 3 things.
Mr. James, go ahead, sir.
Looking at the clock, I want to be courteous of the time because I totally recognize that. I think we need to make a decision regarding this meeting. If that decision's been made, I just want to make sure we're clear on what it is. And then my question was potentially, and I can do this separately, I have some questions regarding the annual report, maybe some questions, corrections, edits, and just wanted to figure out how we might bring that back up so we can address those. But that doesn't need to happen now because you're right, it's 9:25.
Okay. So, Mr. James, would you be able to email those to the administration, 3 things that you had? So we'll make sure that we get those on the agenda.
Sure, I'll put together something to send over.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I thought I left with with Tangi confirming the meeting. Are we still, I know it wasn't a vote, it was a poll. Are we still okay with her confirming it as an introductory share our vision, perhaps?
I mean, I personally would be okay with just saying, hey, this is the panel, this is the board. But as far as sharing anything else, I think that we should pretty much be concerned with what I'd like to hear what their expectations is of us. But I don't know, whatever the board decides collectively, I'm okay with it. And so I'll move whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think we got 3 minutes to make a decision, so, man. I see Miss Bryant right there, I know that look. No,
I don't think they have any expectation of us. It's what we expect from them. And I don't know.
Okay, so we'll, as of right now, we'll go with going ahead and let Tangi go ahead and move forward with that.
I think what would be helpful if Tangi, because I think the location is also, if it's virtual,
Okay.
I think that might be more amenable to people versus it being in person. So maybe if we can just get confirmation via email tomorrow of if it's in person or virtual, then maybe we could do something like we did with the names that we had, right? And just have a poll maybe, and if a majority is fine with it, then we go on with the meeting. But I think the time clearly threw some people off already. So maybe the location also might, if it's in person on a Tuesday at 10, you might even have less people that are going to be available. So maybe we should just wait to see. If it's virtual, we might be able to have more members available, and then we can do that. So maybe we should we should have Tangi reach out and just confirm location for us.
Agreed. Okay, that works for me. Any disagreements? Awesome. Okay, great. Anything else? Tangi, Ashley, or Denise, do you guys have anything else? Do you ladies have anything else?
Nope.
Marva Jo Camp, do you have anything else?
Absolutely not.
I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Ms. Bryant, I'm telling you, you read my mind. I was coming right to you. Okay, thank you. Any seconds on that?
I second Ms. Bryant's motion to adjourn.
Okay. Ms. Bryant, take a vote. I didn't hear you, but I think you said no.
I didn't make
Okay.
the motion. Come on.
You are now. Dr. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. James. Mr. Melton,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
is really absent. Mr. Sanchez,
Good night. I mean, yes.
Mrs. Springs,
Aye.
Yes.
Mr. Bergamini, yes. Mr. Duval, yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Meeting adjourned at 9:29. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
one, everyone.